There was a young man who was attending a motivational seminar for the day. He wasn't getting much out of it, and he went outside to get some fresh air. He looked around and he saw all those tires that looked like they needed a little attention, so he went around and let the air half out of the tires. Then he stood outside as all the attendees left and he said, I wonder if they're going to think their tires are half full or half empty. Well, I certainly hope you get more out of this module than that young man did out of his motivational seminar. So before we get started, a couple things to make sure that you have. Number one, have your handouts ready to go. It's got 3 pages that you will want to use. Take great notes. Remember, if you don't write it down and you rely only on your memory, you'll probably retain 10% or less of what we talk about. And believe me, you're going to want to remember this. Here's a toughie. Inspect yourself, not others. A lot of times it's pretty easy to go through this and think, oh, my manager needs this, or my employees need this, or my spouse, or my kids. I'm not saying they don't. Right now, we are inspecting you, not anybody else. Have fun with this. Think of where you've done it right and think of where you can improve. And finally, try some new ideas to use and maybe some of the old ideas that you've used in the past and forgotten about. Bring them back to the surface and let's try them again. So who comes to mind when I say positive mental attitude? There's probably somebody who comes to your mind. Have you thought of them? So in thinking about those people, who thinks that a positive mental attitude really is important? And also who thinks it can be challenging to have one? Who thinks it can be worth the work to get one and keep one? And would a positive mental attitude make a difference to you? Would it make a difference in your professional and your personal lives and all of your relationships? And if you answered yes to even one of those questions, how? Hit pause and write down how it would make a difference for you. So much of what we do and who we become is controlled by our attitude. Now, it's easy to have a good attitude when things are going well. The reality of life, though, is that things don't always go well. The reality is that your furnace breaks down on a Sunday morning when it's 5 degrees outside and your home warranty company tells you they can't send anybody out because all of their furnace people are too busy and you've got 3 young kids in the house. The reality is that a customer who told you they were going to send a contract over never did, and now they won't respond to your voicemails or your emails. And the reality is that your boss tells you to take a hard line with the client on a rate increase, which is exactly what you do. And then when they get in front of the client, they fold like a wet napkin. So how do we respond to these situations instead of reacting to them? See, people with a positive mental attitude are more likely to respond instead of react. Responding is above the line. Reacting is below the line. I had a client call me and say that the person I was coaching in his organization had 0 improvement in the 2 months I was working with them. Now, to react to that situation would have been to get very defensive and argumentative. Instead, I listened to him. And then I came up with a solution to make it right. And now we're doing even more business together because of that response. Believe me, I wanted to react because at first I started to feel very defensive. It wasn't about me though. It was making sure that our communication was good and I could respond and act appropriately. So responding will give you a very different outcome than if you simply react. So what we're going to talk about in this session today, what is the right attitude? When we say right attitude, what does that really mean? And why should we have it? Why don't people have them, right? If it seems like it makes sense to have it, why doesn't everybody do it? And then we're going to give you a very specific plan of how to do it. Too often we talk about the things that we know we should do, but we really don't know how. You will know how to when we're done. So what is the right attitude? What is the right attitude? Have you ever been affected by somebody's attitude, whether positive or negatively? And how did it affect you? How did that affect you? So the right attitude, let's make a really good definition of it. The right attitude is a mindset of gratitude and positivity that understands reality while looking for solutions and how to make things work. It doesn't mean we live in a little dream world with our head in the sand. It means we can inspect reality, find solutions, and find ways to make it work. So is attitude contagious? Right? Have you been affected by somebody else's attitude? All right, so why have it? Does it really make a difference to our life? Let me share some statistics with you. Well, 85% of the reason a person gets a job, keeps the job, and moves ahead in the job is because of their attitude, not necessarily their specific skills. Only 15% is due to specific skills. You know, an interesting thing happens though, when the attitude and mindset is right, the skill set will then follow. I'm sure you've worked with people though who had the right skills and yet they didn't perform in the job, and it was really hard for them to get along with other people. Well, how about this? Here are the health benefits to having a right attitude. Increased lifespan, lower rates of depression, lower levels of distress, greater resistance to the common cold, better psychological and physical well-being, and reduced risk of death from cardiovascular disease. How about being able to better cope during hardships and times of stress? They're coming, and they do come, and you've experienced them. But how are we responding to them instead of reacting? Are you convinced yet? Okay, a couple more, and then we'll move on. With a better attitude, you'll also do better in your career. You'll have better relationships, and you'll likely have stronger physical health than if you don't have a positive mental attitude. I don't know about you, but I am certainly sold. So let's do a checkup from the neck up. Remember, we're inspecting you. You are inspecting yourself. We're not pointing the finger at anyone else. And here's an interesting thing. If you point a finger, go ahead. Do it with me now. Point a finger. When one goes out, there are 3 pointing right back at you. So this is all about you. Checkup from the neck up. So how can you respond versus react? Take a moment to think about a time when you responded to a situation instead of reacting, how it changed the outcome. If you haven't seen the formula before, event plus response equals outcome. But see, that response can also be a reaction, and that will change the outcome of the situation. My client who was unhappy because they didn't see results with one of their salespeople, if I'd reacted, that person probably would never have gotten to a level of performance. But the response allows us to inspect what's going on and improve from there. See, responsibility, if we change the way these syllables are, is actually our ability to respond. It's nobody else's responsibility. It is ours. How we respond to a situation is 100% completely ours. And see, every action is preceded by a thought. Something's gone on between the ears before the action happens. So if we want to build our reserve to respond, right, we've got to really build up these muscles. Plenty of people go to the gym to work on their outside muscles. We're going to work on our muscles between the ears, probably the most important ones that there are. So we need to control our thoughts. Again, sounds good. How do we do it? Let's talk about it. So here are a couple common phrases that definitely fall on the negative side. Oh, you've seen them. I can't. What's the problem? I'll try, but. And this is a problem. We're going to redo these in order to find ways to shift our mind from reacting to responding. So instead of I can't, you can replace that with I could if. What does that do? It takes you to a place of solutions. I was working with somebody recently and they said, well, I don't have enough time. I can't get it done. And I asked them, what could happen if? And so they changed. Well, I could if I can cut this meeting short. Or I could if I can save time in another way. I could if I didn't watch an hour of TV tonight. Changing from I can't to I could if. What's the problem? Right? Somebody calls you up. Hey, what's the problem? We use this very flippantly. But instead, we want to move to how can I help you? If somebody calls you with a problem, what can I do to help? Customer service representatives are usually very good at this. They've been trained on it, that if you call when you're angry and you've got a problem, they say, well, how can I help you? I'll try. You know what I'll try is? It's really just an excuse to fail. Instead of saying I will try, when it's something you probably don't have any intention of doing, instead, change your words to I will do, and then fill it in with what you are capable of doing. Remember, positive mental attitude doesn't mean that you can do anything. It's looking at the realistic expectations that are in front of you. If somebody in front of me needed an emergency appendectomy, I don't think I'm the person to do it. No matter how positive I am, I'm not a surgeon. But what could I do? Well, I can get the emergency people on the line as fast as possible, or I can get you to somebody who can help. Focus on what you will do that's possible for you to do. Okay, the word but. We had a really good meeting today, but we still have a lot more to do. In that circumstance, but discounts everything we've just said. Yeah, you did a really good job, but you still need to be better. What if you changed and replaced the word but with and? We did a really good job today, and we're going to continue focusing on. See how that changes things. Instead of using but in that situation, using and. And finally, this is a problem. What are we thinking of then? We're only thinking about the problem. Instead, here's an opportunity. See, opportunity doesn't lie in the job. It lies in the individual who looks at the possibilities instead of problems. A really fun exercise to do, and we're not in front of each other, so we can't do it, but I've done this with many groups that I've trained, is I will have somebody come up to the front and I'll have them put their arm out to the side, kind of like they're flying an airplane, if you can imagine that. And then I'll hold them on the shoulder and their arm, and I'll have them think negative thoughts. And their arm is very weak. And I'll have them think these negative thoughts, and I'll continue pushing their arm down. Then they shake it out. Step 2 of this is I have them think positive thoughts. And I do the exact same pressure that I had done before to push their arm down. And guess what? They're actually stronger when they're thinking the positive thoughts. So how important are these positive thoughts, and how can you improve your mental attitude? Well, I'm always reminded of a time when I was working with a sales team, and after we were done, this woman came up to me and she said, Tiffany, I just can't take it anymore. This place is negative and I'm so unhappy. I don't know what to do. You've got to do something for me. And I said, well, why don't you let's write down everything that you do see as positive about this place? Oh, there's just nothing at all. I said, well, they pay you, don't they? She said, yes, they pay me. So she wrote that down. And you get vacation time. Yes, I get vacation time. And you get your health insurance paid for. Yes, I get health insurance. And you've got a computer and a phone. Yes, I've got all that. And you enjoy working with your clients. Yes, I do. And there've got to be a couple people there you like working with. Well, yes, there are. So we wrote down a list of about 10 items that she actually found positives at work. I said, okay, I want you to repeat these every morning, coming into work, and every day when you leave work. And when I'm back in 2 weeks for your next sales meeting, tell me what you think. So she got there early, and when I walked into the room, it was just the two of us. And I said, well, how's it going? She said, Tiffany, you're not going to believe how these people have changed. Did they change, or did she change? Let's talk about how to change your mental attitude. Number one is to change your mental diet. Imagine I walked into your home and I had this huge bag of garbage and I just dumped it on your floor. How would you feel? Gross. You'd probably be really upset that I just took garbage and dumped it on your floor. So why do we allow garbage to be dumped in our mind? There's a lot of garbage out there. Your job is to play the filter, make decisions over what earns the right to come into your brain and what you should say no to. So reading inspirational material is a fantastic way to change what's going into your mind. Reading books, if you need some suggestions, I've got a bookshelf of them. Listening to educational and inspirational material, not only reading, but hearing as well. You'll start to hear these words and these concepts come into play to allow you to respond. And turning off negative sounds, news, music, white noise. Now you have to determine what that is. Some of them are very negative, and I'm a news junkie. I love the news. And just this morning, I was in the car longer than expected, and I listened to news instead of an inspirational story. And I could feel my mental attitude changing with that. So it's a balance. Yes, you need to know what's going on, but we can take it too far. Oops, let me correct myself. It's a balance, and we can take it too far. So number one, change your mental diet. And this should be right down on page 2 of your handout. How can you change your mental diet? And you may have a couple other ideas that I did not list, so share them with me. All right, the second way to change your mental diet is to become a good finder. So many times we're looking for the faults and the problems with everybody, but we don't recognize the good. And let me tell you, when you recognize the good, you are selfishly going to feel great. One of my sales territories at one point was Cincinnati. So I was making that drive from Columbus to Cincinnati, and I would stop at the McDonald's at the outlet malls. It was just that right in between time. And I had gone in to get something to eat, and the gentleman who was working behind the counter was working so hard. He was sweating. You could tell they were short-staffed. And every time he turned around to the person in line, he smiled and he said, "Hi, good day. How can I help you?" And then he'd turn around and he'd be working as hard as he could to get that food and serve it on the counter. And when I pulled away, I thought I needed to recognize that goodness that I just saw. So I was able to find the phone number for the McDonald's, and I called and I said, "Can I speak with the manager?" And the person automatically was very defensive. "Well, what's wrong? Can I do anything to help you?" I said, "No, nothing's wrong. I wanted to actually share something good." So I got on with the manager and I said, the gentleman who was working at that counter just exuded what you want your employees to do. You could tell it was a tough day. They were short-staffed, and yet he smiled and helped every person to the best of his ability. And at first she didn't know what to say. And she said, "Oh, well, thank you. I'll make sure I pass that along." Now, selfishly, I felt really good. So becoming a good finder, and those people that you work with every day, your spouse, your children, how can you become a good finder for the things that they're doing? So that's number 2. Number 3, changing self-talk. So much of what goes through our mind is negative. I see a lot of different studies, and take which one you want. Some of them say that every 2 minutes we have a negative thought about ourselves. And even more often than that, we have negative thoughts about other people. So changing self-talk can be so important, because every time we go to that negative place, we're forgetting about solutions and ways to make it better. So number 3 is changing your self-talk. And the 4th way to change and improve your mental attitude is to develop an attitude of gratitude. If you take one thing from what we talk about today, make it this. An attitude of gratitude can do more for your PMA and more for your ability to respond instead of reacting than anything else. How do you do it? Grab a piece of paper, grab a note card, grab a notebook, write down what you are grateful for and visit it every day, multiple times a day. And don't keep it just to yourself. Say it out loud. Imagine a conversation with a friend from work where you actually talk about what you're grateful for instead of everything that you want to complain about. Imagine at the dinner table asking your family, what happened today? What are you grateful for? I ask my 4-year-old this every day at dinner. I think her answers are going to change over the years. Right now, it's her toys that she played with that day, or the letter she got at school. It's putting that into practice so that we can build that muscle of being grateful. If you do these things that we've talked about today, this is like a little easy button at Staples. You push that and instantly you're going to feel different, and people around you will notice a difference as well. And at the same time, you're going to have to lay down those roots and let them develop. Now, see, if you want to grow a grapevine that yields amazing grapes for wine, it's going to require patience. See, the first several years after it's planted, it's not going to produce any fruit. Only the root structure will grow. Then in 5 to 6 years, it will start producing consistent fruit. And if it's tended to and it's taken care of, it can produce good grapes for 50 to 100 years. So yes, you can see instant results when you start doing what we're talking about. And you're also going to start laying those roots for the future. If this is producing results for 50 to 100 years, it's not only going to be you, it's going to be people who come after you who you've influenced. Is a good attitude contagious? You tell me. Where do we go now? Take the quiz, prove your new knowledge. This isn't about the quiz though. This is about changing your muscles in between your ears, making them stronger, making you stronger, and influencing people around you. I want you to send at least 2 notes of gratitude to people within Shaffer, any 2 that you want to, but go ahead and write them a little note and let them know what you are grateful for when it comes to them. And then also send 2 notes of gratitude in your personal life. They can be emails, they can be handwritten, however it is you want to send them. They can be texts. And then finally, fill out your contract for success. That's your last page in your handout. And keep this with you though. You're going to use this in your accountability teams. If you only have 1 or 2 points that you want to put down right now, that's fine. We're going to continue adding to this. So I plan to develop myself in the following areas. Write it down. And I will take the following steps. Today, write in the date, Tiffany Timmons, am making the commitment to myself to start my plan by taking the following first step. You've heard it said, the journey of 1,000 miles starts with the first step. Let's take that first step right now. And go ahead and sign it. Keep it with you. And at least go ahead and leave this and smile. It's contagious, isn't it? Until next time.